different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
Good evening. Tonight on The Farage Show, we show you exclusive footage of people who've crossed the English Channel, who are living in a 4-star hotel, but they go off to work every day and earn cash for being in a car wash. I'll ask the question, just how widespread is this around the country? I'll also tell you why Harry and Meghan have proved with their story today about being involved in a near-fatal collision on Manhattan Island. I'll expose to you why they are both complete and utter frauds, and would ask the question, what is Boris Johnson's net zero policy about to do to the British car industry? But before all of that, let's get the news with Polly Middlehurst.
Nigel, thank you. Good evening. The top story tonight from the GB newsroom. Prince Harry claims he, his wife Meghan and her mother were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase involving the paparazzi in Manhattan. A spokesperson for the couple said the incident happened after they attended an awards ceremony in New York last night. The statement said the relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road and pedestrians, as well as 2 New York Police Department officers. The NYPD, for its part, has said they assisted the Duke and Duchess and that the couple arrived at their destination with no reported collisions, injuries or arrests. New York City Mayor Eric Adams said public safety comes first and foremost.
Press, paparazzis, they want to get the right shot, they want to get the right story. But public safety must always be at the forefront. Of the briefing I received, 2 of our officers could have been injured, and it would be horrific to lose an innocent bystander during a chase like this, and something to have happened to them as well. So I think we have to be extremely responsible. I thought that was a bit reckless and irresponsible.
Well, in news here at home, one of the world's largest car manufacturers is warning it may have to close UK factories, meaning thousands of job losses, if the government doesn't renegotiate the UK's Brexit deal. It's after Stellantis, which owns brands like Vauxhall and Citroën, said the current agreement will affect its export and manufacturing operations in the UK. The company says without changes, it will struggle to make electric vehicles at Ellesmere Port and Luton. The European Automobile Manufacturers Association is requesting now a 3-year extension to phase in the tougher post-Brexit rules. Former Brexit negotiator Lord Frost told GB News this will test the UK-EU relation.
It would not be sensible to reopen the entire trade agreement. This particular issue was one of the last to be settled in 2020. The car industry was happy with it at the time, but obviously a lot's changed in the energy electric vehicle world since then. Let's see if the government does decide they want to see if this problem can be fixed. Well, it's a good test of whether our new, warmer relationship with the EU can actually deliver anything.
Labour wants to give local areas the power to build houses on green belt land on the condition it won't impact areas of natural beauty. Sir Keir Starmer told the British Chambers of Commerce that increasing housing supply would ultimately lead to lower property prices. The party says it wants to restore a target of building 300,000 houses every year if it wins the next general election. And that comes as the Prime Minister was forced to drop plans for compulsory housing targets after a backlash from rebel backbench MPs. You're up to date on TV, online, DAB+ radio and the TuneIn app. This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
They're nearly all men, and nearly all of them are quite young men. And they cross the English Channel in dinghies. They pay criminal traffickers to bring them into the United Kingdom, and we pick them up and put them in 4-star hotels. We give them free medical care, free dental care. We give them nearly 40 quid a week, spending money, but that's not enough. No, we've known for a long time that many of these people are working illegally in the economy for cash at the same time as we're paying for them to live here. The trouble is proving these things. Well, this report from Mark White, GB News' Home and Security Editor, proves a case in Aldershot absolutely conclusively. Have a look at this.
Using the cover of a local park, we're secretly filming this car wash in the centre of Aldershot, where some of the town's residents have told us asylum seekers are working illegally.
Bikes, we got bikes! Yeah, I think this is them. I think I see the green bike.
Over recent days, those locals have filmed and photographed a group of young men as they cycle between the car wash and this hotel about a mile away. The hotel is currently closed to the public as it's now being used as asylum seeker accommodation. Filmed working at the car wash, this employee, the residents say, is one of those asylum seekers. As they claim is this young man, another who can clearly be seen cleaning the inside of cars. Along with this third man, who they also say is an asylum seeker. Here, all three are getting on their bikes at the end of a shift, before being filmed again, arriving back at the hotel.
Where have you come from?
Suddenly, two of the men decide to confront the locals who've been filming them.
All day, what do you do in the daytime? What do you do? You working? You work? You work? You have a job? No. No job?
Comparing images, the man here in the hoodie is very clearly the same man pictured working at the car wash. He is, we're told, an Iraqi national. And the other asylum seeker confronting local residents is also one of the car wash workers. As we arrived to film the car wash ourselves, both men were back at work. The man in the white cap is this man who confronted those outside the hotel. And here's the Iraqi asylum seeker with the jet washer, clearly the same man outside the hotel in the hoodie. We decided to confront them with our evidence. Excuse me, sir. Excuse me, sir. Can you speak to us? Can you tell us we're from GB News? Are you an asylum seeker?
Sorry, this boss.
Are you an asylum seeker?
His boss. Sorry.
You've been filmed going into the asylum seeker hotel.
I'm little speaking English.
But you're from Iraq, is that right?
Yeah.
It is currently illegal for an asylum seeker to work, as the state provides their accommodation, food, and even a small weekly allowance. Time for a chat with the manager here. So you're the manager?
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you know that this man was an asylum seeker?
No, I didn't know.
You didn't?
No.
Did you not ask for any proof of his former and his sort of immigration status?
He said I'm going to bring it next week.
He said that?
Yeah.
So what are you going to do now, knowing that this man's an asylum seeker?
It's not allowed to work anymore, so I didn't know.
Do you know that there are other people that we've filmed here who are also asylum seekers?
I don't know about this.
Will you also be taking action to ensure that they don't employ?
Of course, straight away, immediately.
This is just one car wash in one town, but we've been told of many such instances of asylum seekers working illegally in the black economy. And clearly, the Inland Revenue never sees any of the money they earn. We've passed on our evidence to the Home Office. Mark White, GB News, Aldershot.
Well, there we are. Absolutely bang to rights and a great piece of work from Mark White and his team. And I know this makes people who are out there working and paying their taxes very, very angry indeed, as I think it should. But let me ask you, is this widespread? Farage at gbnews.uk. Is this happening in your area? And it could, not just car washes, it could be delivery drivers, it could be many, many other sectors. Well, I wonder what the Home Office are actually going to do about this, because I know that Mark White and the team have written to them. Mark joins me now. Mark, this is, clearly Border Force have done their stuff. This is now completely a Home Office responsibility, although, of course, the running of the hotels is then contracted out to a series of companies, isn't it?
It is, yes. Companies are contracted to negotiate with hotel groups and chains to see if they would like to hand over their hotel effectively for a year, 18 months, and they're guaranteed full occupancy. Many hotel chains who've been struggling for business pre-pandemic and even now have decided to take that money offer. Takes these hotels out of commission for a long time, deprives the community of that, and also leads to some tensions in these communities.
But if I'm one of those firms, a Serco, Clear Springs, whatever it is, and I've got the contract for this hotel, I then provide the staff for this hotel. Surely there's a responsibility on these companies that are making vast amounts of money to make sure the people in those hotels are not acting illegally.
I think that's a very good point, actually. I was remarking to my team when we were filming at this particular hotel in Aldershot that the security personnel there, contracted out by the Home Office, were very exercised about us being there and filming, ensuring that we were not doing anything that would be in any way a threat to the asylum seekers there. But that same level of curiosity did not seem to extend to where the asylum seekers were heading on their bikes each day and then coming back at the end of, clearly, what was a full shift. Now, in terms of what the Home Office are doing, this falls under the remit of immigration enforcement. And to be fair to them, they're doing a lot, Nigel. Last year, they carried out some 4,000 raids on business premises where they had information that people were working illegally. And we're told from senior sources that actually a significant and an increasing proportion of those illegal workers are asylum seekers. And that should be no surprise either, because the fact is the number of asylum seekers coming here is growing significantly each year. 46,000 almost that came across last year. And this year already we've got that 7,000 mark. That figure's just been passed today. 250 odd, we're told, from our producer down in Kent, came across in small boats today. So that'll be adding to the strain already on the asylum system. It'll be putting more people out there in communities across England and Wales. And some of those, at least, according to our sources, will find their way, despite being given these allowances and hotel and food accommodation.
I suspect, Mark, it's rather a lot. But, we can't prove that. This we have proved. But I think we need to dig deeper. If the Home Office give out these huge contracts worth hundreds of millions of pounds to these companies. Those companies, it seems to me, should be responsible for making sure the people in those hotels are not working and acting illegally. Have you had a response from the Home Office to this directly?
Yeah, they've said that they take this very seriously indeed, that it deprives people in the UK of a job. Clearly, these people are not also contributing to society. There are conservative estimates, Nigel, of 1.2 million people working in the black economy, the illegal economy in the UK, and a proportion of those growing all the time are asylum seekers. That's 1.2 million people who are not contributing to tax or indeed to national insurance. That's many billions of pounds that would actually be of benefit to this country that instead filters its way back usually to the families of these individuals back in their own countries.
Well, I can't say I like the story because it drives me bonkers, as I'm sure it will many of our viewers and listeners who are paying their taxes, but well done, great piece of work. You've exposed the truth here. Keep it up. Mark White, thank you. Well, I'm joined now down the line by Tony Smith, the former Director General of UK Border Force and now Managing Director of Fortinas Global, who, of course, advise on borders and security. Tony, thank you for coming back on the programme. So it's all very easy, really. You get in a dinghy, you're picked up, put in a hotel, given everything you need, 3 square meals a day, dental care, you name it, and you just go off and work in the black economy. My question to Mark a moment ago, I'm going to put the same one to you, is whilst this goes from Border Force to Home Office, surely those private companies running those contracts should be held accountable for this.
So the position with them, Nigel, is that they are providing accommodation for people who claim to be destitute on arrival. And as you say, significant amounts of money are involved in those contractors. They're not detention centres. They are free to come and go from hotels. The responsibility regarding employment rests with the employer. And I think the manager that you interviewed there may have a few more questions to answer if immigration enforcement go back there, because he has a legal duty, Nigel, to check the credentials of all of his workforce. And if they're legally allowed to work, asylum seekers can work after a year in the UK, then he has to keep copies of those documents. And he's liable to a fine of £20,000 for each illegal worker that he employs. So it's quite a lot of money that would be going into the revenue. And you can rest assured, as Mark said, immigration enforcement teams are out and about as we speak all over the country. They do target places like this, and they do find people that they're able to remove, Nigel, because it's quite hard to find illegal immigrants. So there is a lot going on behind the scenes on all this. I can understand why people are angry that people are going out and working for cash when they shouldn't be. And there's not much we can do with the asylum seeker, because you take them to court for an offence of illegal working, well, they're asylum, they've got asylum, they can't be deported, they've got no money to be fined, really. So there's not much sanction against them. But there are significant sanctions in place and available against those employers. So I would urge any employers watching your show, Nigel, who are not copying documents and checking documents thoroughly, not just of everybody. They are obliged, including British people, to keep records and to satisfy themselves. If they don't do that, Nigel, then they will feel the force of the law. And I think that poor chap down in Aldershot may well feel the force of the law. Well, if immigration enforcement go back there and he can't show that he's done the checks on these people. And I don't think he'll be able to do that from what I saw from
Well, I hope that does happen. Tony, I'm encouraged to hear both Mark and yourself tell me that the immigration enforcement teams are incredibly active and busy. Good. But the scale of the problem just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. We've crossed the number 7,000 today that have crossed the channel. I'm told on good authority the reason it's not more is they're having trouble accessing outboard motors at this present moment in time, but money talks, and I'm sure they'll find a way around it. The Prime Minister has pledged to stop the boats. Are we any closer, in your opinion, to stopping the boats?
Well, you know as well as I do, Nigel, the problem is the ongoing legal debates. We've got a new law now in the Lords. We've got the Court of Appeal now still waiting on their judgment on Rwanda. The key to all of this is removals, and we're not really removing anybody. I say that. Perhaps we are removing Albanians, for example. You look at the removal figures, they are able to identify and send them back. But we've still got a problem where most of those people coming off of those boats will go into the UK. They'll be served with notices saying you're not admissible. But they will then go into this system where until we have legal authorities in the Border Force and Immigration Enforcement to actually arrest them and remove them from the territory without fear of judicial intervention, without putting the Home Secretary in contempt of court, and without you guys demonstrating and showing pictures, Nigel, of people actually being removed from the country, that message is not going to get across to Calais. It's not going to get across to the migrants or the human smugglers, is it?
No, there are no disincentives at all. Final thought, Tony, if I can, while I've got you on. You mentioned Albanians a moment ago and the government having some limited success in sending people back to Albania. But it seems that we're actually bribing people to go back to Albania by giving them payments of up to 1,500 quid to go back to the country that they've left illegally. What on earth are we thinking?
Well, I mean, I think that the thinking behind the policy, Nigel, is a cost-benefit analysis of keeping somebody in a UK prison for an inordinate period of time and then deporting them at the end of their sentence, or encouraging them to leave much earlier in the process so that they are deported. They're not using up valuable prison space. It's not costing us any more money. The key to that, though, is making sure they're properly punished in the first place. So that's the question: are they properly punished for whatever offence that they've done? I think that most people say, well, they need to be properly punished. Secondly, though, Nigel, what we really must do is keep them out of the territory. If you can deport somebody from the territory, we fingerprint them, we photograph them when they land, wherever they turn up. That's why we need enforcement teams. That's why we need radar. That's why, because if they're coming back, we can arrest them, fingerprint them, identify immediately. You've already a previous deportee, and you can then be stopped from coming back. What worries me is I'm hearing stories that some of them are getting back in again. And
well, I bet they are.
That's really defeating the whole object of the exercise, isn't it?
Yeah, come to Britain illegally, commit crime, go to prison, and get 1,500 quid to go back to Albania and come and do it again. I have to say, I understand your point about the cost-benefit analysis, but morally, it strikes me as being very wrong. Tony Smith, I've no doubt we're going to speak to you again very, very soon. And thank you for joining us. So the big story that broke this afternoon, quite extraordinary. Yes, it's, of course, Harry and Meghan. This amazing statement they put out about what happened after the awards ceremony in New York last night. They were apparently chased for 2 hours around Manhattan and involved in a near-fatal collision. In a moment, we're going to expose why that whole thing is a complete pack of lies.
It's all about family, being in people's living rooms, all the interaction and getting to know who our viewers and listeners are.
When I was young, my dad used to say, "Nah, stop arguing." I wanted an outlet that would enable me to give my opinion.
People are going through a really hard time right now, and I know that you don't feel like you're being listened to by the establishment.
I came to GB News because it's the People's Channel, and I want the audience to have their say on the events of the day.
We're dynamic. We do something different. Democracy shows that the wisdom of the nation is in its people.
I get to travel to find out what the story is from a personal perspective.
The British people aren't fools. We know when we're not being told the full story.
We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this.
It's the best country in the world.
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent your views.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
The Jubes and Co, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Mark White. As GB News Home and Security Editor, I cover those key issues that are so important to you. Our authorities, our communities doing all they can to combat violent crime. With the public services under unbearable strain, why are we still failing to control our borders? Defence, the first priority of any government, has been continually hollowed out. Can we trust our politicians to protect the armed forces? Join me, Mark White, on GB News.
So your reaction to that package showing people who've crossed the channel working here illegally? One viewer says yes, and shame on the Conservative Party for still not stopping the illegal boat crossings from France, wasting £7 million a day to keep migrants in hotels. Another says to me, let them work legally and pay into the system whilst waiting to be assessed. Let me promise you something. If you do that, that is the nearest thing to an amnesty. And the numbers coming won't be 50,000 a year, there'll be hundreds of thousands every single year. Now, this extraordinary statement broke this afternoon UK time, a statement from the Sussexes. Last night, the Duke and Duchess and Mrs Raglan, that's Meghan's mother, were involved in a near-catastrophic car chase at the hands of a ring of highly aggressive paparazzi. This relentless pursuit, lasting over 2 hours, resulted in multiple near collisions involving other drivers on the road, pedestrians and 2 NYPD officers. While being a public figure comes with a level of interest from the public, it should never come at the cost of anyone's safety. Dissemination of these images, given the ways in which they were obtained, encourages a highly intrusive practice that is dangerous to all involved. And I saw that and I thought, what you're really doing is you're saying that the circumstances, the awful circumstances in Paris in '97, in which Diana died, were created on the island of Manhattan last night. I think also what Harry's saying, given he has a legal case going on at the moment, demanding that he gets protection 24/7, is that he can't survive without the British taxpayer stumping up for him. Well, I was sceptical about this from the very start. And here we had Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, responding.
I would find it hard to believe that there was a 2-hour high-speed chase. That would be, I find it hard to believe, but we will find out the exact duration of it. But if it's 10 minutes, a 10-minute chase is extremely dangerous in New York City.
Well, yes, Mayor Adams, I would find it very hard to believe too. Bizarrely, halfway through the so-called chase, they got out of their blacked-out SUV and got into a yellow New York taxi, where the chase continued. And yet Mr. Singh, who runs the taxi, says, I don't think I would call it a chase. I never felt like I was in danger. It wasn't like a car chase in a movie. I think they may well have over-egged the pudding. I think this could be the issue that gives them actually their ultimate comeuppance. Let's see. Well, let's find out how things would have operated on the ground in New York. And I'm joined by former NYPD detective Bo Deatle and, significantly, of course, these days, running Bo Deatle and Associates Security and Investigation. So, Bo, welcome to the programme. Let's begin the investigation. A 2-hour high-speed car chase on Manhattan. How likely, in your view?
May I use the English term rubbish? Because I think this is total rubbish. And last night, matter of fact, I was doing for Disney, I did all the security at the convention center. We had Kardashian there. We had all the famous people there. We were bringing them in and out. This, to me, is the most ridiculous sounding thing in the world. I've been in the security business from retiring from the police department for 38 years. First of all, the most important thing is the safety of the person that you're guarding. The person you're guarding, safety, the principle is the most important thing. And they want you to believe for 2 hours they were chased by 5 blacked out SUVs, chasing them all over, through red lights, through speeds, hitting other cars, maybe hitting cops. This is, I think, part of the drama that is being made up by them. And again, you have cameras on every corner in New York City. This is going to be very easy to get the cameras and the police to investigate this. And already Mayor Eric Adams has gone on the air because this is the most ridiculous sounding thing. First of all, again, if someone's chasing you, why would you put your principals' lives in jeopardy? And then you get out of the car, you go into a yellow cab. Nothing makes sense. I like to know who the security that they're using, who hired it. Stevie Wonder? I mean, this is ridiculous. I never heard anything like this.
I mean, presumably, Bo, if you were looking after a couple of high-profile celebs...
I do it all the time. I do it all the time.
And if something threatening happened to them, I mean, you'd be on to the police department to come and help immediately, wouldn't you?
Exactly, and what we use is a lot of retired detectives and cops. And right away, you would pull the cars over, you'd signal or call on your cell phone. You needed a 1085 of a police car. When you come there, you identify yourself as a retired guy. We're having problems with these idiots that keep chasing us, taking pictures. The cops will get involved at that time. Then they said they went to a police station. Nobody helped them. I'm laughing, Nigel, and I love you on Sid also. You know, I do Sid with you also in the morning there on 77. But I love your focus on this. I think you are dead right on this thing. This is another made-up story. Are they royal family still? I don't know. What are they? What are they?
Oh, they want to be everything. They want to have it every single which way that loose. They want to keep the titles and do no work. I just wonder whether this is the incident that exposes to the world how frankly dishonest they actually are. Final quick thought, Bo, while I've got you.
Yeah.
Given that on the corner of every block there are cameras in New York, is it possible that anybody can get hold of that data so we can recreate at some point what really happened?
Well, the police cameras you're not going to get, but they also have other cameras where they have with the private businesses. But I think the police are investigating this because it's kind of an embarrassment to Mayor Eric Adams that it went down in his city. And I think that they should investigate it and they should come out with their findings. And again, whoever they're hiding for security, they could buy a $12 million house out in California. Well, you better pay a little bit more for your security there. What's her name? She a queen? What is she by now, Meghan? What's her
title? She's not a queen. No, I can't have that. She's a duchess. And maybe not for much longer. Bo Diesel, thank you for joining us, giving us your assessment. I've got to tell you, I love the Stevie Wonder line. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Nigel. Thank you, my friend. Bye-bye.
In a moment. The Renters Reform Bill has come before Parliament today. There's been a pretty major announcement in the last 48 hours coming from Sir Keir Starmer. It looks like housing, the cost of housing, the availability of housing could become one of the key issues for next year's general election.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things. We've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage. Here on GB News, we will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat.
Did you know,
All
Kate
sorts of
Moss?
rumors. Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Simon Evans. Join me on GB News for Headliners at 11 p.m.
What's the scoop?
I'll be joined by two of the country's top comedians.
That's right.
As we take a look at tomorrow's newspapers tonight.
We're going to get into trouble.
If it's a big story, we'll be covering it.
Spill some tea on him.
There we go.
But we'll also have some fun.
I wouldn't stick up a bank.
My father didn't love me. So anyway.
Headliners every night from 11 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates. Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned. I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed. So I guess they've always been quite woke. That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Yep, it's housing, housing, housing. Keir Starmer is going to build on the green belt. He is going to build the homes we need in this country. We have, of course, the Renters Reform Bill that's finally come before Parliament. Mr Gove's masterpiece, it seems to me, that will just reduce the amount of housing stock available to the rental sector. But whichever way you cut it, property is becoming a big, big debate. Nathan Emerson is CEO of Property Mark, a professional body for the sector. Nathan, the government target is to build about 300,000 homes a year. We've not been matching that for the last few years, have we?
We haven't, and I think obviously we can take the COVID out of the equation there, but for a long time we've not been matching the targets. We've not been creating the supply that we need in order to cater for obviously the residents of the United Kingdom.
Well, you say the residents of the United Kingdom. What about the newbies? I mean, if net migration is forecast to be 700,000 or more next Thursday when it comes out, I worked it out. We need a new dwelling every 2 minutes just to cope with those that are coming in, let alone the shortage that we already have. But there are problems here, aren't there? Because on the one hand, people say we must build lots of houses, but on the other, the Liberal Democrats seem to pick up an awful lot of votes at the local elections by saying we will not build here. How on earth? I mean, how do we do this?
Never in my backyard.
Yeah. Well, yeah.
The reality is we have to make sure that there's a blend and a mix. And building new homes, obviously, is a criteria we need to do. But it's the prioritisation of land. We're not creating any more land. Nope. So, effectively, we've got to use what we've got sparingly and proportionately. We've got to also build for the older residents that we've got. We've got an ageing population. We're not building enough bungalows, and that's
so smaller.
That sort of stuff.
So for the ageing population, smaller units.
Not necessarily smaller, but more affordable. Because what we do have is larger houses which are effectively bottlenecked at the moment with older people staying in them and making conversions and moving family in. So we're not releasing some of the larger houses as well. So to actually build the right mix of properties proportionate to the locations is important. But equally, making use of brownfield sites probably is a priority, and refurbishing and utilising redundant commercial buildings is a great opportunity as well. My worry with initially people thinking Greenbelt is the answer, and certainly we've mentioned areas of outstanding natural beauty, it also provides natural wedges, it also provides green corridors, so it has to be thought through very, very carefully.
If we get rid of the green belt round London, London will sprawl onto the south coast and up towards Birmingham, basically. We've been talking a lot about Gove's plans for landlords and making the point repeatedly on this programme that most landlords are not rich people. They've inherited, a flat or a small house and they're renting it out as basically income for their retirement. Any shocks today from what Michael Gove's put before us?
No, I think most of it has been gradually leaked out. Certainly Section 21 was a major commitment, and they are delivering on that as promised. And so that will certainly be an area which will be a focus for landlords, and it will be an area of...
Now, this is the no-fault evictions.
Correct. So this is what's termed as a no-fault eviction.
Yep.
It is the mechanism that, as a landlord or an agent on behalf of a landlord, you'd give the tenant a notice period to quit. The other option is what's called a Section 8, and that is now what the mechanism that the government is wanting us to use. They're broadening the scope of that to try and curb antisocial behaviour, lack of rental payment, and to make that a much more robust tool.
I mean, of course there are some rotten landlords out there, some really nasty, mean, horrible, not all modern-day Rackmans, but there are some rotten... but there is the sort of most infamous one ever, I think. But of course there are some rotten landlords and terrible problems getting deposits back and all sorts of things that go on. But ultimately, my fear, and the reason I keep covering this story, is we have a shortage of letting accommodation in university towns. Rents in London are up almost 20% in the last year. And everyone's telling me, Nathan, that with this renters reform bill that we've finally seen today, which, as you say, has no shocks or surprises in it, a lot of people will say, you know what, the hell with it. We've borrowed money to buy this property. We're now making a loss on it. We're just going to sell this property and it leaves the rental sector. How big a crisis are we facing?
We are seeing a lot of stress in the system, probably no different to house building. We need more houses built, nobody argues with that, but we need more mix of rental properties. And the current regime or criteria that sits there surrounding is causing angst amongst landlords and not creating the environment we need to get more into the sector, to provide good standard homes of a decent standard for tenants that actually genuinely want and need long-term accommodation. There isn't enough social housing to cater. We do need the private sector to support. And, you know, you look at the Renters Reform Bill, the devil will be in the detail with that, because there are areas in there which, obviously, we've had the headlines from them, but it's now the scrutinisation of how does that come into practice.
I tell you what, you're going to be very busy over the course of the next couple of years, because this debate's going to run and run. Well, the other debate that I've been talking about this week is my absolute disappointment that the government have not deregulated from EU rules, making it much easier for Keir Starmer, if he wanted to take us back into effectively single market rules. And here he was being interviewed earlier on today.
The specific question of the Brexit deal, look, we're not going to re-enter the EU. We do need to improve that deal. We need
so you would renegotiate?
Well, it comes up for renewal, and of course we want a closer trading relationship. Yes, absolutely do. You know, we want a closer trading relationship. We want to ensure that Vauxhall and many others can not just survive in this country, but thrive in this, because there are jobs bound up. There'll be families watching this morning, either employed at Vauxhall or similar places, deeply worried about what this means. So yes, we need a better Brexit deal. We will make Brexit work. That doesn't mean reversing the decision going back into the EU, but the deal we've got, it was said to be oven ready. It wasn't even half baked. So of course we've got to repair that, along with all the other things that we'll have to repair if and when we're privileged to come into government.
And because so few EU rules have been taken off the statute book, in fact, basically none of any substance, it would be very, very easy for Keir Starmer to sign us back up to single market rules. An 80-seat majority, and they've done nothing with it. A final thought for this segment. I've been telling you for the last 2 weeks, if you want to, please vote for me for the annual Television and Radio Awards, the Trick Awards, by going to their website. You've been doing so in large numbers. The website kept crashing. We were told yesterday that the website was down for security reasons. I wondered whether that was because simply too many people were voting for what they thought might be the wrong candidate. I don't know. I'm not crying stolen election just yet, but their website is still down. I'll bring you more news again tomorrow. Voting was extended until 5 o'clock this Friday, but it begins to have a very awkward feel to it. Well, you heard Vauxhall mentioned there by Keir Starmer, and the auto industry is very important in this country. Car manufacture, 800,000 jobs, some problems on the horizon. And I'll be joined by Tim Tozer, former chairman and managing director of Vauxhall Motors, in just a moment.
Monday to Thursday nights on GB News. At 6, it's Dubes & Co. 7 o'clock, Farage. At 8, join Jacob Rees-Mogg. And at 9, Dan Wootton Tonight, followed by Headliners on TV, radio and online. This is GB News.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News has its own late-night paper preview show, Headliners, where comedians take you through the next day's top news stories. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper, we've got it covered for you. Headliners, every night at 11 p.m, and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Start the day with GB News.
We catch up on all the big stories you didn't hear the night before.
And take a look at what the world's talking about this morning. That's right, Monday to Thursdays from 6 o'clock. It's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Straight after breakfast, join us, Bev Turner and Andrew Pearce. We're going to take you through till noon.
We'll be tackling the big topics of the day, including the things that the other channels just won't talk about. If it's happening here. Wake up to mornings on GB News, the People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Jacob Rees-Mogg, the Member of Parliament for North East Somerset and a former government minister. For years, I've walked the corridors of power in both Westminster and the City of London. We need to have the arguments, the discussions on how we make it better.
Crop failures, famine, war, suffering on a scale completely unimaginable.
We are putting the cart before the horse. As Charles I said at the scaffold, he was the true defender of liberty.
Yeah, I've completely derailed the conversation.
Join me Monday to Thursday at 8 p.m. on GB News, Britain's news channel.
So we're going for all electric cars after 2030. That was Boris Johnson. That should be fairly straightforward and easy now, shouldn't it? But the problem is, of course, we don't manufacture enough batteries in this country. We've got one plant up and running, another perhaps on the way, which means we have to import them. That then leads directly to technical problems with exports to the European Union due to something called rules of origin, which I won't go into now. But what does the car industry do? It matters. 800,000 jobs involved. Well, you heard Vauxhall mentioned by Keir Starmer a moment ago. Tim Tozer is the former chairman and managing director. A lot of news headlines today, Tim.
A lot.
About the car sector, the problems we face. How do we get into this mess?
Well, look, first of all, it is a big deal for Stellantis. I mean,
who are the owners of Vauxhall?
They are the owners of Vauxhall and another range of brands, Peugeot, Citroën, etc. Yeah. So they're a big company. They make 6 million cars a year, about, of which only 200,000 approximately are manufactured in the UK. But the issue they're up against is if you break all the bits and pieces that go into a car and then assess the value, to avoid a 10% import duty into the EU, the value of the bits made in the UK and including the EU actually has to be above 45%. And he's basically saying he can't do that. And that is principally because there's no battery manufacturer close to Ellesmere Port or Luton. And so he's staring down the barrel of 10% imports taxes as they export into the EU.
But that's because we're going for all electric cars. If we were sticking with internal combustion engine cars, we would not be facing that problem. And You know, I noticed that in Germany and the EU, they've said, well, hang on a second, we're going to keep internal combustion engines, electric's fine if you want to, and go for more efficient fuel. Isn't this a direct result? Now, some will say, it's all because of Brexit, but isn't the truth of this current dispute that actually this mad rush for net zero was put in place without thought or planning?
I mean, that programme to say that beyond 2030, no petrol engine or diesel engine car could be sold in the UK, which was 5 years earlier than the EU had adopted, was a piece of virtue signalling from our old friend Boris. That's what it was all about. And the critical thing with the car industry is, I mean, if you design a car and then wonder how long it's going to take to be built and come off the production line, it's about 5 years. And so the government actually, I'm afraid to say, have not been awake on all of these risks that are now staring them.
Asleep at the metaphorical wheel.
I think asleep at the wheel. So, for example, I mean, BMW in Oxford, where currently they make the electric Mini, I mean, we know that that electric version in the next generation of Minis is going to be built in China. And China is the dominant force in electric vehicles. I think even we could suggest that the 10% import wall that the EU are putting around themselves is designed to protect the European car industry, the continental European activity, from Chinese imports, which I sort of half get. But you're right. I mean, this.
But with Chinese access to the raw materials, given what they've done in Africa, we can never compete in this market.
They control 80% of cobalt. There's been some studies which have said that the amount of lithium that would be needed if the UK market was 100% pure EV, you'd need another 15 lithium mines. Now, you're not going to get that. So the one thing the industry needs now is a delay and time with government support, and I don't necessarily mean financial support. No. Government has to engage with strategically what needs to be done to protect the car industry in the UK.
Extend the 2030 deadline, give us time to rethink strategically what we should do.
I think absolutely that, because if you do not do that, you are putting at risk the investments made by existing global auto companies, because they're all global now. There's no car industry that is British. It's all a global car industry in Britain. And they want to see something that they can get a return on investment out of this market.
That's the way the world works.
And it's a bit troubling. The government need to up their game.
Tim Tozer, thank you for that clarity on those points. Isn't it funny? All the Greenies think building 15 lithium mines is absolutely great. But just to open one coal mine up in Cumbria for the British steel industry somehow is an act of environmental destruction. I can never quite get my head around it. Now, on the 17th of May, 1923, a woman called Betty Fergus was born, and she lives today in Broadway, Worcestershire. Betty, it is your 100th birthday. I've been told by Jeff Marchant, family friend, that you've always been a bit of a fan of mine, that you watch this show every single day. So happy 100th birthday, Betty. Please enjoy the day, raise a glass. We're thinking of you, and thank you for your support. OK, it is time, I think now, for us to move on to Barrage the Farage. And the first up is Kieran from Hull.
Hi, my name's Kieran, and I want your opinion on the economic state of the world right now.
Well, it's a world living on debt. I mean, remember that in 2008, we finished up with a credit crunch, a massive overextension of debt, and it particularly hit in the housing market in America with all sorts of very odd, bundled up mortgage products being sold to people who, frankly, when tough times hit them, couldn't make the payments. What I would say to you is that the world is more indebted now, the Western world is more indebted now than it was at the time of the crisis in 2008. And I'm talking national debt. Just look at our national debt. I mean, it's ballooning. It's pretty much now at 100% of our annual gross domestic product. The same can be said of corporate debt and of personal debt. And here's Joe Biden spending money, borrowing money on a level that we can't even believe. There are some that say we will come out of COVID, we will come out of excessive debt with a very, very soft economic landing, and there won't be a recession in the latter part of this year. I have to say, personally, I feel a bit more bearish than that. I just don't think you can go on creating funny money indefinitely without at some point in time there being something of a reckoning. And that's why on this programme, I've said to you before, whilst it's not my job to give you investment advice, I think gold can be a very safe haven in times like this. And despite all the sceptics, I tell you what, the world of crypto has not yet gone away. OK, let's go to Daria from Hull for the next question.
Hi, my name is Daria, and I would like to know your three main reasons why did you push for Brexit and made the UK leave the EU?
Number one, I believe in my country. I believe that it should be independent, free and proud. Number two, I believe in democracy. I think those that make our laws should be subject to us being able to get rid of them at elections and turf them out and replace them with somebody else. And the third reason for wanting Brexit, you know, I came into politics from business, and it's funny, isn't it? All the people involved with the Brexit debate on either side, I was one of the few genuinely involved with international trade, moving, trading commodities all around the globe. And I very much take the view that our future, yes, of course, sovereign, putting our own people first, but our future will be as a global trading nation. Europe is declining in economic importance in the world. There are many other countries that are growing very, very quickly, and I genuinely believe that we can be far better off with Brexit than tied to a sclerotic, overburdened model from Brussels. And that is why my anger at the Conservative Party is as it is. They have not got rid of excessive regulation, teeing it up for Keir Starmer, as you saw this morning on that BBC Breakfast interview, to put us straight back into single market rules. But I won't take it out on Jacob Rees-Mogg. That wouldn't be right. That wouldn't be fair.
You're very kind.
Jacob, what are we talking about today?
What are we going to be talking about? Well, we're going to be talking about this attack on landlords that's going to shrink the private rental sector. Up until the 1980s, with Margaret Thatcher's reforms, the private rental sector was getting smaller and smaller. Why? Because people couldn't get their properties back. If you want to have choice for tenants, if you want to have low rents, you need a deep and active market, which means respecting the rights of property. And these reforms that are being proposed are so short-sighted, bad policy, and not the answer to the shortage of properties, which is the failure to build more homes.
Yeah, I mean, look, you know, the sale of council houses in Thatcher's time was innovative and very successful. I mean, we could criticise and say not enough social housing was built on the other side, but it was a hell of a policy. But what's happened to Michael Gove? I mean, Michael Gove was, you know, a leader writer on the Times, a conservative thinker, one of the more intelligent people I've always thought in government. What's happened to him?
It's mystifying, because today we've also had the news that we're doing incredibly well in reading statistics, which is thanks to the policies implemented by Michael Gove and Nick Gibb as the Education Minister, and going for phonics, which was a really tough policy, which the left hated.
Yes.
And Michael took them on and he won. And now he's adopting a policy that the Labour Party in the 1970s would have advocated.
I can't understand it, but you're right. The reading figures were good. Our education is better. That's it from me. It's Jacob from now after the all-important weather.
Hello again, it's Aidan McKibben here with the GB News forecast brought to you by the Met Office. Cloudy and damp in the far north, but drier elsewhere. And there'll be some areas of broken cloud, but also some clear spells over the next 24 hours. High pressure firmly in charge. However, that high pressure is extending from the southwest. It's covering much of England and Wales, while Scotland and Northern Ireland sees some weak features. Some weather fronts introduce cloud and occasional outbreaks of mostly light rain. The rain focused across northern Scotland through the night, especially the Northwest Highland, where it'll be particularly damp and there'll be some moderate outbreaks. Showery rain elsewhere across Scotland. Northern Ireland, England and Wales will be dry with clear spells. Temperatures in some sheltered spots dipping into the single figures. Coolest across eastern and southeastern England as we begin Thursday. Sunshine here. 1 or 2 showers possible towards the east coast of England. Otherwise, a lot of fine weather.